Hey guys, Silver Potter Reads here, and I've decided to do another chapter of Spike today, before my mouth gets too dry and I get bored or something. So let's get on with chapter 3. I remember the first day I met Spike. Really met him. I mean, he'd always been around and I knew who he was. It wasn't like he just popped up one day and we became friends. No, we went to the same school, and at this point we were both in the 2nd grade. I was in 2C, he in 2B. Nobody really talked to him, and no one was ever hanging out with him. He was just there, sitting by himself somewhere with his face hidden behind his dark bangs. I think the kids were afraid of him, not just because he looked scary and never talked, but mostly because he was very violent. Excuse me. Yes, it's weird to think back on it, considering just how calm and polite he is now. But he wasn't always like that. Before we became friends, he was very violent and rude, little bastard. He'd leave people alone if they left him alone, but if anyone talked to him, he'd hit them. At least that's what all the kids thought, but I always knew that was half the truth. How? Well, it's kind of embarrassing, but I used to observe him sometimes. You can say he became kind of an object of fascination to me, if I can call it that. And one thing I took note of was people never talked kindly to him. They just called him names and throw pebbles and twigs at him. The kids were really mean to Spike the first few times they dared coming close to him. And I think they found it kind of fun, or maybe they got a rush from it, having done something to him knowing they were risking getting beaten up. Like teasing a sleeping bear. Because Spike wasn't someone who'd just sit there and take it. If someone threw a rock at him, he'd chase them down and beat them till their noses bled if he got the chance to. Or he'd spare himself the running and throw a rock back at them. Which reminds me of that time he got into a fight with that teacher. She caught him beating up this other kid and started yelling at him. Spike stood there staring terrified at her like he was expecting her to hit him. Actually, in retrospect, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what went through his mind that moment, because soon he picked up a rock in defense and threatened the teacher with it, holding it up in the air, getting ready to throw it at her. And he'd do it too if it hadn't been for that second teacher who came and grabbed his wrist so hard he dropped the rock. They tried dragging him with them to the principal's office, but he was struggling so much that they had to carry him there. Though not without a fight, they didn't. Everyone remembered that scenario. It sort of became what kids remembered him by, and after that they showed him more respect. Or, well, respect, I think fear is a better word. However, there's still some who kept teasing him, and Spike kept getting sent to the office, and no one ever cared asking for his side of the story. The adults only saw Spike as a troublemaker and not someone who got bullied on a daily basis. No one except me. I felt sympathy for him, though I dared not speak to him. Not until that one day when I was forced to, the first day I got to see what his eyes actually looked like. It was winter, and me and some other kids were having a snowball fight. We ran around shrieking and laughing with snowballs flying through the air. I was captain of my team because I was the best shooter. Soon there was only me and the other team's captain left. I picked up a snowball and aimed at him. He stood there in front of a bench shouting things like I couldn't hit a building even if I stood right in front of it and stuff like that just to agitate me. Then I launched the snowball. It flew right in the air, and I would have hit him if he wouldn't have been so damn fast. That's when I saw him. Spike, but it was too late. I gasped and covered my mouth with my mittens. Spike had been sitting on the bench, but I'd failed to see him because the captain kid was blocking the view. But now we all saw him. All eyes were on him and the big fat snowball that smashed in the back of his head and ran down his neck. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Milo, the team captain, suddenly burst into a loud laugh, and the rest of the kids followed. Milo turned to me and said while laughing, "Great shot, Sam!" That's when Spike turned around and looked me straight in the eyes, and if looks could kill, I'd fall over dead in an instant. He turned his head slowly round again, brushed away the snow, and got back into his previous thoughtful position of sitting, with his head bent down. He looked so sad sitting that way, and I felt like the most rotten person in the world for having humiliated him in front of everyone like that. I wanted to go over to him and apologize, but my earlier observation told me to stay away. The bell rang and everyone walked inside. I started walking inside too, but stopped and looked back when I reached the door. As usual, Spike was the last one to walk inside, and I decided to wait for him. Hi. I'd never been more nervous in my entire life as I was when I uttered that short sentence. Spike stopped when I heard it. He was standing just a couple feet away from me. I started twiddling my hands to hide the fact that they were shaking. Are you mad at me? I carefully asked. About the snowball, you know? Because it was an accident and... I'm sorry. Spike just looked at me, his face seemingly expressionless behind his bangs. Then he just walked past me, and I did a very stupid thing. I grabbed his arm. Spike turned around faster than I'd ever seen anyone in his life, clutched my throat with his little hand, and slammed my back against a brick wall, hissing at me the first words I'd ever heard him say. "Don't fucking touch me." At first I was just dazzled by seeing his eyes that the wind had managed to uncover, those dark, enigmatic eyes that still never ceased to mesmerize me, but then I noticed that those beautiful eyes were glaring viciously at me. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I said, terrified, and held my hands up in surrender. Spike let go of my throat and then added a threatening, "And stay the hell away from me," before he walked inside the door and was gone. I looked after him, still with my hands up in the air without really realizing it, and then smiled. I couldn't help but to do that. Spike had just talked to me, and it didn't matter if it had been in a highly threatening manner. He'd actually talked to me. I think I'd gotten a little obsessed with my fascination for him, but hey, I was just a kid and I had friends. I was actually quite popular because I was good at making people laugh. Kids love that. But I wanted him as a friend, without quite knowing why. We actually had to walk the same way home every day, but when we came to the forest, he'd always take a shortcut through it while I took the long way around because I was scared of the forest. I'd always keep a far distance from him while we walked. However, that particular day, everything was going to change. I decided to walk beside him. I was going to talk to him again. The school bell rang, and for the final time, and over 300 kids burst out of the many exits. I followed 2 other kids for a short while, then I walked by myself for a couple of minutes slowly. And just as I planned, Spike appeared behind me not too long afterwards, walking really fast like he used to, still with his head bent down, looking as though he was observing his feet. "Hey!" Spike stopped looking at my feet and then finally gave me a quick glance, even though he had his 5-second rule. Oh, I haven't told you? Spike never looks anyone in the eyes for more than 5 continuous seconds. He's never told me this, but I know. I've counted for years, and 5 seconds is the unchallenged record. Anyway, so he finally looked me in the eyes, if only for a brief 3 seconds. I counted then, too, as part of my observations, and then he just mumbled, "You're in my way." I stuttered, began twiddling my hands again, and noticed he had no mittens on his, and his jacket wasn't even a winter jacket, just an oversized hoodie, and his shoes were sneakers. "Aren't you cold?" I asked. He just said, as though he didn't want to repeat himself, and then just walked around and past me. I didn't grab his arm this time. I'd learnt my lesson, but I dared to follow him. "Hey, I'm going the same way," I said. "Mind if I follow you?" I was expecting him to say yes, but instead, and to my greater pleasure, he just shrugged. "Cool." I smiled, and I reached my hand out like my father always did when he met new people. I introduced myself with a short, "I'm Sam." Spike just gave me a dumb look. "Oh, right," I said, and I withdrew my hand. I'd almost forgotten the "don't touch me" warning, and obviously the "stay away from me" one as well. "Spike," Spike said, and didn't even look at me as he kept on walking fast. I had almost jogged to keep up with him. "But you already know that, don't you?" he then said. "What?" I asked, not quite following. "You're one of them." "One of who?" "You call me names and throw rocks at me." No, I'm not one of them, honest." Spike snorted. "Liar." I stopped and stared at him. "Liar? Me? What do you mean?" "You threw a snowball at me today, stupid, and when you stop walking behind me, it's creeping me out." I ran a few paces until I caught up with him. Then I told him that the snowball was a total accident and that I'd never intended to do it on purpose. He just snorted me again. "It's true, I'm not one of those who fucking make fun of you. I hate those people." "Then why do you hang out with them, huh?" "Okay, this guy was good. What was I supposed to say now?" They just don't know you." And Spike looked at me 4 seconds. "And you think you know me?" Then he snorted again and kept on walking. "I'm sorry," was all I could say. Then Spike suddenly stopped and spoke with his back turned against me. "Look, if you're gonna walk with me, then at least walk beside me and not behind me, for fuck's sake." I know now that Spike hates it when people walk behind him, but I should have realized it back then. I was just a foolish kid, foolish indeed. "Sorry," I said and laid a hand on his shoulder. The sound of impact between his fist and my face was so loud the birds stopped singing for a short while, and even louder was my howl of pain. "What did I tell you?" Spike shouted at me. He shouted a lot more when he was younger, but only when he was mad, and right now he was furious. Blood dribbled from my nose and tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. I couldn't speak, only cry. It hurt so badly. Then I got angry. I got angry at myself for crying and at Spike for having punched me in the face just because of a friendly gesture. He was such an asshole. I was going to get back at him. I stood up and tried punching him in the face to let him get a taste of his own medicine. But the fast bastard, he managed to dodge it with ease. I was so mad at him, I tried to strike him again, but with the same result. Then he hit me in the stomach. I fell to the ground, bent over in pure agony. Then he kicked me once more in the stomach before he walked off. I staggered to get up on my feet, managed to ignore the pain even enough to run towards him, and punched his face as he turned around. We started a big fight that lasted quite a while, and lasted until we both lay panting on the snowy ground. Spike was very fast and got in more hits than I did, but I've always been stronger ever since I was a toddler, so my hits probably caused more damage. Each of the 3 times I landed a punch, he fell straight to the ground and struggled to stand up. But Spike is the most stoic person I've ever seen, and even back then he made it look like it didn't hurt at all. Must be from all the beatings he's getting back home. He's probably used to it. Oh god. Man, you're fast, I said, gasping for air. I heard Spike chuckle for the first time. You're not half bad yourself. And then I start laughing. It hurt, and I had no idea why I did it, but I laughed out loud. What are you laughing at? Spike said, angry, probably thinking I was mocking him. I don't know, I said, gasping for air. What kind of idiot are you? Spike said, and then he fell into fits of laughter as well. I remember when I got home that afternoon, Dad looked like he was about to have a stroke when he saw me all beaten up with blood all over my clothes and face. What the hell happened? He asked, shocked. I just smiled at him and said, I made a new friend today.